So I'll let Karen get seated. So I'm Charles Noyd, and I'm with the Polk County Historical Society. I told Neely I think I'm related to half the people in this room, but so I want to welcome you in here to the beautiful Osceola Civic Center. The city was kind enough to allow us to use this facility for free today for the benefit of the Historical Society. So I'm going to tell some stories today about the women homesteaders in Polk County, and it was a little hard for me to determine. I had to narrow it down to just a few. There's a lot of great stories to tell. I hope that this becomes a book at some point with my research and Richard Pearson's research. So my friend Richard Pearson graduated from Osceola High School. He went on to Kearney State College, became a history teacher up in Battle Creek. And after Richard retired, he moved to Columbus and he started really digging into his genealogy. And he got interested in his ancestors who homesteaded. And he said that he didn't know enough about homesteading. And so he started to dig into it, and that became an obsession. Because before you know it, Rich was digging into every parcel of land in Polk County that was homesteaded. Not just his family, but everyone else's. He had a desire to document them all. So he came to the Historical Society with this project, and he said, I want you guys to see this because I need a little help finishing it up. I think he was 85 or 90% done. Couldn't find the rest of the people, didn't know how to find them. He also wanted help publishing a book. And so we were able to put this together with Rich and myself and Ronnie Branding and a couple others, finish the legwork of those parcels that he couldn't find. And we were able to get almost every parcel documented. The Homestead National Historical Park in Beatrice gave Rich an award because they were pretty blown away with this project. I think we're the only county in the state who has anything like this. Also, the Q150 committee designated it as a signature project for the Nebraska Q150. Rich was very proud of that. Rich passed away this last year. In his later years, he handed his research over to me, which was wonderful and daunting all at the same time because he said, I would like you to finish some of these projects for me. And one of them was this women homesteader thing. So what did Rich find? A few of his findings were that he documented 1,000 parcels of land in Polk County. 960 people made final proof on those homesteads. 335 of them were Civil War veterans. One was a Spanish-American War veteran. And 61 of them were women, which is about 6.5% of the homesteads. So I'm not going to get into the details of homesteading, but the basics. The claimant had to be 21 years old or older. They had to be an American citizen, or they had to have at least applied to be a naturalized American citizen. They had to be on the property for 5 years, and they had to make some improvements, including building a house and breaking ground. So Polk County lands in an area that is in the railroad land grant area. And so that made Polk County look like a checkerboard. Every other county was homesteaded. For the most part, the vast majority of Polk County, the odd number sections in the county are railroad land, and the even number sections are homestead land. The exception to that is a few sections in the Hackberry District, the southeast corner of the county. It was a little too far from the UP Railroad, and so it's a little different down there. After the Soldier and Sailors Act was passed in 1872, Civil War veterans or their widows were eligible to homestead 160 acres in Polk County. Everyone else was eligible for 80. So the 61 women, those 61 women at some point during the process were single. Doesn't mean they were single at the beginning or the end or the middle, but at some point in the proving up process, they were single women. Some of them were single all the way through the process. Some had been widowed in an eastern state. Some had been widowed in a foreign land. They came here for opportunity. They came out here and homesteaded on their own or with their children. Some were widows of Civil War veterans. Some of them became widows after they came out here after their husband applied for the homestead. And unfortunately, some of them were abandoned. So I'm sure in the back you can't see this real well, but I'll explain some of it. This is the testimony of a claimant. The claimant had to make a testimony, so did some of the neighbors. So each one of the files would have her, this is Christina Bankston. She homesteaded just up north of the town, where the town of Polk is now, in the north half of the northwest quarter of Section 4, Township 13, Range 4. Her parents homesteaded the south half, and she homesteaded the north half of that section. So it says in here, Christina Bankston, I am 28 years old, and I'm a single person. Remember that, I'm a single person, okay? So, and then it goes on here, and it says, her address was Clarksville, Nebraska, was the post office box. And she said that in May of 1873, she made first settlement. In October, she made final settlement where she moved onto the property. And it always kills me because almost every one of these homesteaders moved on in the fall. And I think that first winter was probably really tough. Probably made them think about going back east. In here it says that she had broken 45 acres of ground. She had set out 10,000 forest trees. Once again, it says she had a sod home that she built in 1873. She built a frame home in 1877. She said that she approximately had spent $700 or made $700 worth of improvements to the parcel. She got it for farming purposes, and on the 45 acres that she had broken, she had raised wheat, oats, corn, rye, and potatoes. Now another date. This is 1880 is when she signed this testimony, okay? So she became a naturalized citizen. This is another document that is in the homestead packet, your homestead documents. If you were an immigrant, more than likely your naturalization papers are in that document. It says Christina Bankston, she renounced the King of Sweden, of which she was a subject. Now, remember 1880, she made this testimony. Well, she said twice in that testimony that she was a single woman, but she got married in 1877. And she married Louis Beckman, who was also a homesteader. Now, I asked the Homestead National Historic Park about this, their historian. I knew my opinion of it from my readings of the law, and he said that this was common, but she should have relinquished her homestead as soon as she got married. But instead, she married him. She was also 20 years old, based on a number of documents I found. So she didn't meet the 21. Rich thought she was 16. He had her birthday wrong. I found her birthday. She was 20. Big deal. But she also was a married woman, and he already had a homestead. So if you look here, Christina and Louis, it's spelled two different ways depending on which document you look at, are about 2.5, 3 miles apart. Now, when I look at their documents, Christina's proving up her improvements were way better than Louis's. So I think at some point, Louis went, we need to get married. He kind of gave up on his and didn't put as much into it, was down the road helping her make hers, because hers really was, she did a lot of nice stuff. That's just my theory. So this is looking south with my drone. And so you can see Christina Bankston's homestead. Her parents, Banked and Mary Peterson, had the 80 south of her. The Laclede Cemetery is where they're all buried. And then there's the village of Polk off in the distance. So James Stewart, not Jimmy Stewart, James Stewart, homesteaded just straight east of Strasburg, straight south of Osceola, in Section 4, Township 13, Range 2. He was a Civil War veteran, had 10 kids. His daughter, Louisa Marquise, was married to a man named Robert Marquise. He was a Civil War veteran as well, but he died in Iowa. She came to Nebraska with her young son, according to the Osceola history book, so that her parents could help her raise her son. She homesteaded. She was eligible for 160 acres because her husband was a Civil War veteran. She homesteaded the quarter south or north of her parents, directly north of her parents. Her homestead file is very interesting. It's 3 pages long. It's the shortest one I've ever seen. I don't know why. She filed for the homestead in 1872, And in 1928, the land office withdrew it. 50 some odd years later, they must have found something that was done underhanded that caused them to withdraw her homestead. And I'm not sure, I haven't looked to see who owned the land in 1928, if it was a family member or what. She did get married to Thomas Kennard from Osceola during the process, which wasn't that out of the ordinary. She was a widow lady with a young child, so she married Thomas Kennard. But her file still says Marquise. They didn't change it to Kennard. Her sister, Josephine Boatwright, was in the same boat as her. Boatwright, I'm sorry. She was married to a Civil War veteran. He filed for a homestead in Polk County, but they hadn't made it here yet, and he died on the way. So he's buried in Iowa, and her young son came to Nebraska, homesteaded a couple miles away from her sister, a couple miles away from her parents. She was an educated woman. She taught school while she was proving up the land. She built a 14 by 16 frame house with one door and 4 windows. You notice that she has an 80. Well, she's a Civil War veteran's widow. She was due 160 acres. And so Josephine proved it up, and she had an interesting about 2-month period of time. She proved up the land. She married the sheriff, Samuel Pheasant, and she took another homestead right next to her sister in about a 30-day period of time. If you were a Civil War veteran or the widow of a Civil War veteran, you had 2 advantages, main advantages. One, you could get 160 acres. The other one, you could take your time of service off of your homestead time. So the 5 years deducted how long you were in the service. So if you were in for 2 years, you could prove up in 3, and you'd have your land. You get your patent. And so Josephine, Louisa, and her dad, James, all took advantage of that. They all were able to get their land faster. So here is another drone shot. This is Josephine's land. And then you can see Josephine's second parcel is right next to her sister and her parents. Now, Christine Anderson. I think this could be considered the first family of homesteading in Polk County. There are so many people that are descendant of these people. So Christine was a widow in Sweden, and her and her 5 children all eventually made it to Polk County. Christine homesteaded Section 14, Township 14, Range 3. She homesteaded the south half of the northwest quarter. Her son Charlie homesteaded directly across from her. He did the south half of the northeast quarter. Her daughter Caroline homesteaded 2 miles north of her, as did her daughter Louisa. Her daughter Hedvig and her husband Olaf homesteaded just west of Sweet Home. Plus they took a timber culture claim right by their sister's claims. All these connections are going to come in really handy for Christine. She's an elderly woman. She was 65. But she was in bad health. And so she lived she had a dugout on the property, and they had broken a few acres. But some of the neighbors were kind of looking at that parcel going, she abandoned it. And so that one individual filed a claim with the land office saying that she had abandoned the property. And so she had to go to court. You can see here how close her and Charlie are. That really is important to her as well, because and you can see the other ones off in the distance there. This is where he filed against her. Ellen Robinson filed that she had abandoned her homestead. This is basically, saying that she had abandoned it, didn't live there. Her son-in-law, John Sandell, testified in court, and they asked, has she lived with her son, Charlie, the last 2 years? And he said, yes, mostly she has. Who has done the improvements? Her son has done the improvements. Does he have a homestead? Yes, he does, half mile away. All this to say, the land office said, you know, we've read through this, we realize she's an elderly woman in ill health. We see no reason to take her homestead away, it's hers. And so this is her land patent, and you can see it says, therefore the United States grants unto Christine Anderson this tract of land as described above to have and to hold, and said this tract of land with all appurtenances, therefore unto Christine Anderson and her heirs. So Christine got her land. She was a widow in Sweden, came across the Atlantic, halfway across the United States, and she became a naturalized citizen. Now, Christine wasn't the only one that homesteaded. I don't know if you paid attention to my beginning of this, but there's two other women in this family. Louisa and Caroline both homesteaded as well. Now, these two were kind of ingenious. They homesteaded 80s next to each other. And in order to make the land office happy, according to family lore, they built a one-sod house that straddled the property line. That worked for a little while, and the land office, I think, was happy. But about a year and a half or 2 years into the process, they both got married on the same day in the courthouse. Louisa married Peter Swanson, and Caroline married John Sandell. There again, lots of descendants in Polk County to these people. Now, the women in here, after I tell this story, I don't want you throwing rocks at me or anything, because I'm not like this guy. But Alfred Ticehurst, or A.A. Ticehurst, or Alan Ticehurst, he had a lot of aliases. I think people are shady too. He was born in Vermont. He fought in the Civil War. He was a Navy veteran. We probably only had 2 or 3 Navy veterans out of 335 Civil War veterans who homesteaded. He came to Ohio, where his wife was born. Clara Sanderson and him got married in 1866. They welcomed Lena and Minnie into the world while they lived in Ohio. Alfred had some sort of mercantile business, filed bankruptcy, and decided, let's move west and homestead. So they came out to Township 16, Range 2 of Polk County. This is the original survey map that was from, I think it was completed in 1860, before Nebraska was even a state. You can see the Platte River. This is the main channel. This is the south channel. They call this middle section the island. So they homesteaded section 24, lots 6, 7, 8, and 9. It amounted to 158 acres. This little line that goes through here, it says the road from Nebraska City to Fort Kearney. We call that the Oxbow Trail. The Oxbow Trail cut directly across the best part of that land. No doubt their land was wagon ruts so deep for the thousands of people that went across there. This is what it looks like today. That's the South Channel, and that's the roads that outline it. There's about 90 acres of this that's farm ground. The rest of it's fairly low, and it's put into pasture. So they built a 24 by 14 sod house with 1 door and 2 windows. They built a sod stable. They put out 300 forest trees. They dug a well. In the first years, Alfred, they raised watermelons. Alfred took them into Columbus and marketed them in Columbus. They did all this stuff. I keep saying they. The homestead file indicates that the word they is probably not appropriate because Alfred wasn't there much. He became a traveling salesman. He sold lightning rods. The second winter, he went to Texas, according to the neighbors, left her there with no food, no provisions. Her and the kids almost starved to death, almost froze to death, and he was down in Texas. He would show up once in a while, and he was like a bad penny. She stayed on the property consistently for 5 years. She did all the work, except for maybe a 3-month period of time, according to the neighbors, where the sod house had gotten inhabitable. She left for a little while until she was able to get it to livable conditions again for her and the kids to move back in. So I said he was a lightning rod salesman. Notice here it says lightning and thunder. Protect your buildings. So later on, there was a article written about A.A. Ticehurst, and it said that he had put a lightning rod on every soddy and stick-built house around, and that he did have one time that he felt bad about his salesmanship. He was in western Iowa, and he was selling lightning rods to an old woman. And she said, "Sir, it's not the lightning that scares me, it's the thunder." And he said, "Well, that's why I have two different types of rods. The straight ones are for lightning, and the twisted ones are for thunder." And he felt bad afterwards that he sold twisted lightning rods to her at a premium, but he made his money and he went on. This is the kind of person he was. So this is 1874 Osceola record. 1875, he claimed that the corn was so tall in Polk County that he was going to have to put lightning rods on it. Some of it was 22 feet tall. Kind of tall tale. Another lightning rod advertisement in the Osceola record in 76. Here in Columbus, he wanted everybody to know, if you lived in these counties, I can get you a lightning rod. Science says you need one, or your soddy's going to burn down. In 76, they welcomed Joseph into the world, their only son. And in 77, things got kind of bad. A.E. Annabelle, A.A. Ticehurst, John Meyerberg, and J.D. Burley, and Van Dusen all got arrested for stealing cattle in Colorado. The sheriff went to the sod house, knocked on the door, arrested Mr. Ticehurst. They took him out to Lexington, Plum Creek, and they had a trial. The governor dismissed a few of the guys, but he wanted a few of them to come on to Colorado, and Alfred Ticehurst was one of them. So the governor of Colorado said, "You're coming for trial." Well, they had opened, here, Columbus is poking fun at him a little bit. Annabelle and Ticehurst may wish that they hadn't done it, but it's too late. So the state of Colorado had built their first penitentiary in 1877. After sentencing, Alfred Ticehurst became inmate number 242. He was given 7 years of hard labor, and they said that they would allow him food and clothing according to the law. This didn't stop him from claiming that he had proved up the homestead. And the land office gave him the patent. Clara's down on the homestead with the kids, and her and the neighbors all went, "Oh no, we're going to fight." And all the neighbors went to bat for her. They testified all these things about him not being there, what they had to do to help her make it. And it went on for several years. In 1880, she filed for divorce, and she asked to have her name taken back to her maiden name, Sanderson. And the court granted it, and they gave her the children. And then they gave her the land. And Alfred spent his time out in Colorado. I've not been able to find out how long he was there. I have found an article in 1884 where he had a mistress in Omaha that he was in a dispute over property with. But Clara did get her land. So, what did these 61 women accomplish? They broke a lot of native prairie, turned it into farm ground. They built houses for their family and maybe generations. They set out tens of thousands of forest trees. That's always an amazing thing to read in those homestead documents. Is, you know, we planted 10,000 trees or 20,000 trees. I think they accomplished a lot. They worked hard. There's a letter that I found in the Strasburg Headlight, and it was the wife of a homesteader in Polk County. And she was reflecting on their time of homesteading. And she said, you know, looking back at our dwelling and our belongings, they weren't much, but they were ours. And I think that sentiment, you know, is probably consistent amongst the homesteaders. So, thank you for coming.